It's 5:30 a.m. Let's be the kid.
What is up, everybody? We are back. It's the Fantasy First Rounders live, as always, with me, real Ryan Hicks over here, and myself at FFR Tom.
Whoops.
Oh, there you go. Ryan's making sure he's got us on all the share groups. We know it's been a minute. We appreciate everyone sticking with us. Apologies for missing the last couple weeks, but Ryan, how are you doing, man?
Better now that we have the show going. Week 7, we got time to make up, missing the last 2 weeks, but hopefully that doesn't happen again. Really, one of it was terrible weather, and the other one was some terrible scheduling conflicts. So hopefully that's settled. I think we get Billy back next week, so that's exciting, and then hopefully Pinto soon after, and we can get the whole crew back together.
Hey, man, all I know is I'm glad to have us back here. Glad to have you here with me. And like we said, we're gonna get back into it here. But important things here: the St. Jude Bowl. Tell us what's going on. I know it's been a couple weeks here, so give us a little update on how that's rolling.
Yeah, fellas, I'm sorry we didn't get to shout out the division leaders from the last 2 weeks, so I am going to bring it back and shout out. Instead of doing scores, we're going to condense this and just do the names of the people. Starting off, Peyton Manning, week 4, Maker's Mark 4 was the high score. Week 5, McAnoo 1, and week 6, Toxic Death. The leader overall is Splani 11. Then we move to Reggie Wayne, week 4. Billy Witt, the Dragon, was the leading scorer there. Then Tommy Pickles, week 5, and Russ J, the returning champ, with his first high score this year. That makes me a little nervous. Team name Killer Cardinals. And then in first place overall, B. Witt representing. He's the only one of us 4 that's in first place in his division. So rooting for you, Billy. CEH, week 4, FF Dynasty Papa. Week 5, Muff Daddy 1. Week 6, Dennington 12, Good Old Boys FF. Nicely done, brother. And then overall, Muff Daddy 1 is the leader. Then we move to Luke Jokel with G DeJesus 519 or New York Wolfpack, who was week 4. And then week 5, Abusement Park, which I need to comment on this. Abusement Park scored 246.58 points. That's the most points scored in the St. Jude Bowl ever. Most of all the scores last year, most of any scores this year. So we're going to be keeping track if anybody can catch that high score throughout the year, because 246.58 is preposterous. Nicely done, Will. Well done. And then we have him sandwiched against another G DeJesus 519, who's also leading the division. Then we move on to Nuke. Wilson Andrew 3, week 4. FF Peacock Miles, week 5. His team name, Josh Allen, in a day's work. Just all in a day's work. Man, I said that wrong. I'm sorry, Miles. And then week 6, Rough Riders. Overall, Miles is in first place in that division as well. Von Miller, RM25, week 4. Scruff Nasty, team name Cold Front, week 5. And then Danny P, 88. Pete Top, Kevin Bottom, team name. I love that team name, dude. Overall, Mark L, 87 is leading that division. Moving to Famous Jameis. TB2 Smooth, week 4. Video Game, a name I remember saying plenty last year, week 5. And then TB2 Smooth again, week 6. Overall, Queen Bees, Pinto's wife, is winning that division. And we were saying, do we need to help her get a draft? And she goes, no. She doesn't need any help. She just got done winning our league last year, so she doesn't need any of our help. That seems clear. She's doing well as well. Super Mariota, week 4, AWH 6172, team name Monkey Fighting Snakes. This is also our overall top point scorer. And then week 5, Frito 2. Week 6, again, AWH 6172. Overall, AWH 6172. Again, I need to reiterate, this is the highest scoring team in the St. Jude Bowl as of week 6. Then we move to Saquads. Stesic 14 in week 4. Britt Hodon in week 5. And then Bushneck 48, team name Hooked on a Thielen, in week 6. Overall, CP Bravo 11 is leading that division. Then we move on to the last division, Killer Kyler. Week 4, Edgeheads. Week 5, Desperados 3. And week 6, Dan Robbins 2021. Overall leader in that division is Desperados 3. We did it. We caught up, at least shouted out the guys who had the high points. Sorry if you were leading division last week and you aren't this week. We still love you. Hopefully you can take that division lead back next week. Buys are crazy this week, though. Holy cow.
They are. I don't know about you, but the last week and this week, it's really getting interesting with some of these bye weeks. I'm really having to kind of hit the waiver wire, finagle a trade here and there, but you make it work, right?
Yeah, I have Cook, Eckler, and James Robinson in one league, and they're all off this week. That's rough. Yeah, it's really rough. I have Javonte Williams. I drafted him just because of this week. I haven't been able to play him one time this year, really, but hopefully Javonte Williams has a breakout this week, which kind of is what our first game is about.
It is. And to kick it off this week, Thursday night, I think it's a fun matchup. It's not quite as fun as it could have been. We'll get into that. But Broncos at the Browns. Browns favored by 1.5 points. Over under a 41 points here. What I'm going to say first is I think I'm taking the Broncos and the under here. We'll get into why. But Ryan, what are your thoughts on this game?
So there are a lot of injuries going on here. Bridgewater questionable again, but this is the third straight week he's been questionable in practice and still plays. So I don't think we're going to be in any worry about missing him. Gordon is questionable as well. There's a lot of guys that, it could really change. I'm not going to touch this game until I get a little more clarity, maybe Thursday morning or when the injury reports come out. But let's start with Cleveland. First and foremost, Denver plus 1.5 over under 41. I'm not touching those until Thursday morning. So if you force the gun to my head right now, I'd go over and I would take Cleveland. And here's why. Ernest Johnson and Demetric Felton have both shown upside flashes in the time they've been playing. I had where is he? So Ernest Johnson, I remember last year there was a little spurt where we got to see some crazy Ernest Johnson stuff. Where are we? Okay, he didn't do that. Okay, this year. So he averaged 5 yards per carry last year on 33 carries. That is not a huge sample size, but that is pretty good. And I know you can't punish the guy because he doesn't have a large sample size, but he showed that explosive ability. And Felton already this year has shown some of it as well with the punt returns and then the little stash plays they have. So I think they're going to be okay. This is by far the deepest running back room in the NFL. When you come to these guys are your 3 and 4. I mean, no, they're not. They shouldn't be starting for anybody, but these guys are not bad. On the other side, on the rest of the offense, I love Donovan Peoples-Jones. I managed to start him in a few leagues last week. Yes, I'm very proud of that. He went off. Not expecting that every week, but he's clearly the highest upside guy. For me, he's the highest upside guy based off of injuries and really whatever happened to Odell Beckham Jr. I want DPJ, not OBJ. So on the other side of the ball, it's Case Keenum. So this isn't like I'll go so far as to say it's not like Tua Tagovailoa is the quarterback here, but Keenum, he has started and he has put up some pretty gaudy stats in the past, and there are weapons. Judy should be back. I don't know if I'm on him yet because of the injury, but I'm definitely on Sutton. Otherwise, this game is just too difficult. It's going to be a fun one to watch. I agree. I wish everybody was healthy because I'd be all over Cleveland in that, but neither team is healthy on both sides of the ball. I might see, even though I think Cleveland is going to start, I might see the Denver defense being viable for DFS and fantasy because of the missing of the 2 tackles. So to me, I'm not going to be all over this game in DFS or fantasy, but there are some intriguing options. And if 1 or 2 of Felton or Ernest Johnson goes off, that's the guy to own this week because they're going to be dirt cheap. Whew. I mean, the thing is, which one? It looks like Ernest Johnson's going to start, but does that matter?
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it with all the injuries there. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I saw 3 or 4 of the Browns' offensive linemen are at least questionable, right? Which is not a great look going into games. We saw what happened to the Panthers going into the Philadelphia game a couple weeks back, where their offensive line got banged up and they were 3-0 going into it, and then all of a sudden they kind of fell apart against a subpar Eagles pass rush. So, I think that could definitely play a role in this, especially not having, of course, Baker Mayfield back there doesn't help. Case Keenum, not a bad backup. He did very well back in 2017 with the Vikings, right?
Yeah.
But he's not the same guy. Yeah, he's not the same guy that you expect for the Browns offense right now.
Right.
I will toot my own horn just a little bit. I remember in the offseason we were talking about what Browns receiver after OBJ, after Jarvis, right? Who's going to be the guy? And I was, we were all kind of between DPJ and
Higgins.
Yeah. And I just had that feeling with DPJ, and obviously it's not set in stone yet, but these last 2 weeks, I mean, it's pretty tough to say that 12 points against the Chargers when he wasn't a focal point, and then last week 26 points against the Cardinals, which is not a joke of a defense by any means. That's a strong defense down there in Arizona. So I was pretty excited to see that. I'm all in on him this week. Aside from that, I mean, hey, if you're in a situation where you need to Ernest Johnson, I'm definitely in on him. Some of the waiver wire, bids that I saw for him were insane. Yeah. But otherwise, I'm not really going for Case unless I need to. Maybe Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper, probably a guy that, depending on what your tight end room looks like, you probably drafted him at a point where you're going to start him here. And then DPJ is the receiver I'd go to. I don't trust anybody else really. And even him, I am hesitant just with Case Keenum starting. I don't know what the offensive game plan looks like, but he's been there long enough. I'd imagine they have something in place. Broncos, on the other hand, don't really have major concerns with Teddy. I think he'll play, but if he doesn't, I mean, Drew Lock knows the team. He's been there long enough now. I'd imagine that, again, they have a game plan in place if Drew Lock had to come in. And the good news for these guys, if he does, he's a gunslinger. So even if you don't necessarily have faith in Drew Lock, you're still going to have some big plays for this offense. So your receivers are going to have plays. Your running backs are going to have plays. I think going forward this year, I'm pretty in on Javonte Williams over Melvin Gordon. I know they're still going to do a little bit of a shared backfield. Yeah, he has looked a lot better. Again, still going to be a shared backfield. I don't think any of us expected that, by the end of the year even, that Javonte was going to take over other than maybe for injury. But I think that he's definitely going to take the majority of the shares. And then in the receiver core, Cortland Sutton. The only other guy beyond Cortland Sutton that I do have interest in still is Tim Patrick. Very curious to him. It's easy to pick him up on waivers in a lot of leagues, 10 or 12 team, unless it's a deep bench. And obviously Noah Fant is a monster. So, I'm taking the Broncos in this one. I think the Browns are just too banged up on offense and defense. And that Broncos defense is looking stout lately. So, but with that being said, it takes us to the first game on Sunday here. Kind of an interesting one. We kind of mentioned that offensive line a little bit here. The Panthers favored by 3 against the Giants in New York, over under 47.5. I don't know what to say on this one. CMC questionable, if I read correctly, right? Obviously that kind of, I think that's kind of the deciding factor as to who's going to win this game, right? If CMC plays, the Panthers are an incredible team. Sam Darnold's numbers are massive. It really benefits them. Chuba Hubbard hasn't been bad, but he's not CMC, and we know that. He puts up serviceable numbers as a starting running back. I've been able to play him in a flex, and I'm not upset with that necessarily, but I wouldn't want to rely on him, at least in this point in his career. But again, if CMC's in there, I'm in on pretty much this whole offense. DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and I'm still going to keep putting the name out there. I put it out there all year, and I'm going to keep doing it. Is Tommy Tremble, my boy. It's only a matter of time. He's shown the glimpses. He's going to have a big game here. I'd say within the next 2 to 3 weeks, he's going to have that breakout, and you're really going to see what to expect from him. Giants, on the other hand, Saquon, again, questionable. I don't know that I trust DFS. I wouldn't trust him to play him. Obviously, if you drafted him in a redraft league, you have to. But beyond that, I mean, this Panthers defense is solid, right? Their pass rush is serious. I don't trust Daniel Jones against it. I think he's going to get beat up in the pocket. I don't think he's going to be efficient throwing the ball either because of that. What do you think, Ryan?
This is Carolina certainly has a legit defense, but Daniel Jones is really fast. I think that Jones remains interesting because of the ground game potential he has. Especially if Saquon plays, he might not get the volume that he would normally get, but he does a lot with the touches he does get. This is another game kind of like similar to the one we had before. There's a lot of guys. Are they going to play? Are they going to not? I kind of want to wait for Sunday morning to find out, because I feel the same way about Saquon. Does he play? And how healthy is he? That's the other question. Now, how healthy is CMC? It's not so much whether they play. It's like, what are we going to get? And then what wide receivers for New York are going to play? It looks like Tony's doubtful. Golladay is God knows what. Slayton and Shepard's back. It looks like Shepard's back for good, and he's practicing, so that's a good thing. Ingram looks to get more involved in the offense, so this might not be the week to deploy him. I'm avoiding this game outside of Daniel Jones for tournament lineups. Now, if we can get a fully realized CMC, then Darnold becomes a play for me because, again, like you said, the differentiation between when CMC's on the field and when he's not, and you can see it. It's not pretty at all. I'm also avoiding Robbie Anderson entirely. How many drops does that guy have? And they were all in one game. Like, that was insane. Thank God he got a touchdown for those people who actually started him, because that was an awful game up to that point. This could be high scoring, though, if there's enough offensive players playing in this game. Like, say only one or two guys miss, and it's not Saquon and CMC and stuff. It's just maybe Tony and Golladay, or Tony and Slayton, or Golladay and Slayton, whatever, just two of those guys, because they do have a lot of depth. Then this could get pretty interesting, because New York, if they could get everybody healthy all at the same time, I think this offense is really high scoring offense. Are they healthy? I mean, it's hard to know. So I'm avoiding. I'm going to lean New York, because I do think Saquon plays, and I think because it was a sprained ankle, which, I mean, most of us have had a sprained ankle before. That can be hard to get back from, but it's not like permanently damaging. So once it's back, you're back. So I can see Saquon being effective right from the get-go, just because a sprained ankle. I mean, yeah, it's tender and sensitive. You don't want to injure it worse, but he shouldn't really be.
That was a serious one, though. But it was like the size of my head.
But it showed no like structural damage or permanent damage. Like, I've had some bad sprained ankles. I don't know if anything that bad, but I've had some bad sprained ankles, and you're better. You just have to stay off of it for a while. So this could actually be beneficial for him if he was banged up in any other way. This gave him a chance to recover. But I don't want to touch this game either. This is probably the hardest week to bet the spreads that I've ever seen in like since I started betting. I looked at these spreads, and I only liked really one of them, and I'll get to the one it is later when we get there. But I don't know how much time we should be talking about this. This is tough. If this was like the day before the game, or we were doing this podcast at 11 o'clock, I think we could do a way better job of being accurate about what's going to be happening here. So guys, if you have these guys, you've got to be available mid-morning Sunday to know who's playing and not, because whoever is playing in that wide receiver core, I know Carolina's defense is good, but New York, they may be behind, and they're going to have to throw. Somebody's catching those balls.
And my biggest thing is for our advice, at least to me, if CMC is playing, I am much more in on anybody on that offense. I might not be as in on CMC. For like a DFS, I don't necessarily want CMC or Saquon, right?
Yeah.
I don't trust them in that sense. But if they are playing, everyone on the team becomes more viable, because these two running backs are so polarizing that they're going to take attention off of anybody else on that field. So it helps everybody, even a 50% Saquon or a 50% CMC.
Yep. And I gotta say one thing. I want to get it recorded. Chuba Hubbard sucks. The only reason he is viable, like you said, and you could start him in a flex, is because the volume he was getting. He's not good. I do not like him at all. He's like Chris Johnson if Chris Johnson didn't know how to play running back. Like, that's what's
fair
to me. He's very fast. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, I saw it in college. He had holes I could drive my truck and a trailer through all through college, and that speed translates when you have that much space. He's not going to get that much space in the NFL. I don't see him ever translating as to something other than a backup running back that you take as a handcuff for volume purposes.
Agreed. But that moves us into a divisional matchup here. Jets going into New England. Patriots favored by 7, over under a 42.5. Ooh, Bill Belichick versus Zach Wilson, the Mormon. What do we think here?
All right. Look, I know that Belichick versus rookie quarterbacks is not good news usually, but hear me out here. I think Zach Wilson is due a breakout after the bye week. Everybody can say what they want. I've seen the flashes in Wilson about why he was taken number 2. I honestly think his upside is still through the roof. This team hasn't been gelling or getting going, but we've seen more and more Michael Carter lately. And that is something that I think is important moving forward. The wide receivers all seem pretty healthy. You've got Crowder, Mims, obviously Corey Davis, Elijah Moore. That's not bad when you talk about all of those 4 guys at the same time. You can kind of keep some depth at the receiver. I don't really like what's going on at tight end there. But Carter and Zach Wilson, I think those are plays this week. And I know New England's defense. We think New England's defense, they're vulnerable this year. On the other side, I love Jacoby Myers. I think that he's trending in the correct direction. He has momentum. And then Hunter Henry, it does seem like he's become the fantasy viable. And I did not expect that. I expected Jonnu to be the guy with his wheels and stuff. But Henry with the size and the red zone knows he's definitely the guy that they're looking at in the red zone. And then Damian Harris, as long as he's fully healthy, this guy is a lot better than people were drafting him at. I mean, I think he's shown that enough. So Harris is probably an interesting DFS play just because of how they use him. I mean, sometimes he's taking snaps. I love it. He definitely seems to be the running back there that you want to own, and rarely can you say that in New England. But for me, give me the Jets and give me the over. I don't think they're going to be able to stop they'll be able to stop the Jets, but they're not going to be able to keep the Jets under 21. And I think Mac Jones has been absolutely good enough to be considered the best rookie quarterback up to this point so far, just because of his accuracy. I know that it's a system but my goodness, if you can complete 70% of your passes, period, I don't care what kind of passes you're making, that's incredibly impressive. Then throw in the fact that he's a rookie and his weapons aren't exactly impressive in their own right. Mac Jones has shown that whether or not he's a fantasy viable quarterback for his entire career, this guy is an NFL quarterback, and New England found the next guy. He's super accurate. I love watching him play. He's very good at quarterback. I think he could be like a more realized Alex Smith.
He evokes our favorite word on this show: efficiency.
Yep, it's
efficiency. He is. He's definitely played well. I mean, no question on him, right? Like, I'm in on Mac Jones long term. I will say, as far as a fantasy perspective, his points haven't been crazy. I had somebody asking me, who would you rather start this week, him or Davis Mills? And I said, not even a question. It's Mac Jones, because he's consistent, right? He might not put up 25 points, but he's going to put up 15-ish. Whereas Davis Mills could put up 15 or he could put up 5. And I haven't seen consistency out of him. So also, but imagine the Patriots offense is much better, clearly.
Imagine if Michael Thomas winds up in New England next year. Like with that, because in a lot of ways, in all the things that Breeze was real good at, Mac Jones is too. Those little slants, the accurate on-point throws. If you give him a weapon like that and Michael Thomas can get back to what he was doing best, you might see a fantasy viable version of Mac Jones. But with the current weapons that he has now, it doesn't seem like there's rhyme or reason to all their guys. Like Myers is the most complete receiver, and that's not good.
I wouldn't even say that Mac Jones isn't fantasy viable, but it's like a QB2 or a super flex guy, because again, it's that consistency. He's going to get you 15 or so points every week. Great.
I like
that's
what I
one
see.
thing. I'm not mad at that. And again, it's going to continue to develop, right? That's the biggest thing. He's a rookie that they're definitely not playing some elaborate schemes there that he's throwing bombs downfield. I'm sure when they get to a point where they're more comfortable with it, they understand what they have in him, they can open up an offense a little bit at least. I know Bill Belichick doesn't always open up the offense all that much, but to an extent you can do that, especially with somebody they're confident with. So I do like him. Aside from him on that offense and Jacoby Myers, it's Damian Harris, and that's about it. The tight ends, Jonnu and Hunter Henry, I don't know.
Henry's TD dependent, but he's getting
He is, but it's just personally with the rest of the tight end class, I think there's guys I'd rather have around the same area that I just can't justify Henry over somebody else, especially in DFS for the price. There's other guys I want to have, unless if you're on a play that's going for that boom or bust, he's going to be the boom. Like you said, he's TD dependent. He's getting them. So there's positives and negatives to him. But aside from, kind of that grouping, right, I don't really want Aguilar. I just don't trust him. Kendrick Bourne doesn't do it for me. And none of the running backs behind Harris have done anything of note to me, at least. So Patriots, that's about all I got on them. But the Jets, I do like what I'm seeing with Zach Wilson. Obviously, there's a lot of turnovers, but we're seeing a lot of growth with him. We knew the Jets were going to be bad this year, but we're seeing him learn from mistakes, I think, and develop a lot as a quarterback, which I think is helpful, right? I think long-term, he's going to be a very good option. He makes a lot of really good plays. And then that receiver room is not as bad as we think it is. Corey Davis is playing pretty well. Jameson Crowder, not terrible. Elijah Moore's put up some pretty decent numbers. But my favorite part of it, a guy we talked about a lot in the offseason, is Michael Carter. Obviously, nothing outrageous, right? But over the last few weeks, we saw him face New England in week 2, 10.8 points, 11 rushing attempts for 59 yards, about 5.4 yards per carry, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 29 yards. Not too bad. No touchdowns, so obviously that hurts you a little bit. But in the last 2 weeks prior to their bye week, 1 touchdown each week, 10 and 13 carries apiece, getting 10.5 and 14.8 points respectively. So, I mean, he's putting up solid numbers for a guy that those last 2 weeks, he was only getting 51 and 52% of the snap count, which is increasing pretty much week over week. I mean, at the end of the day, you know this is a guy that's going to take over from Kevin Coleman and Michael Perrine and Ty Johnson, right? They're not going to keep this rookie that's putting up solid numbers from playing. He's definitely building a chemistry with Zach Wilson. I think you're going to continue seeing that. I mean, I think that 10.8 points against New England in week 2 with only 45% of the snap count is probably a pretty safe floor. I think he's going to start getting that 10 plus points a week. He's not a starting running back for you, but he's a good flex option. And again, in shallower leagues, 10-team leagues or something, this is a guy that you can go out and get, or you can trade for in dynasty leagues without too much difficulty at this point, at least from what I'm finding. And it's definitely somebody I want to hold on to long term because he's getting, a pretty steady amount of targets a game in a passing game. And again, that volume is going to continue building.
Holy crap, the next game.
Yeah, this next one's an interesting one. Chiefs favored by 5.5 at the Titans. Over under 57 points. I got to kick it off with this. I'm taking the over. What are you thinking as far as over under?
Smash the over.
Yeah.
Smash the over. Neither one of these teams can stop anybody, and neither one of these teams can be stopped. It is a combination for a 40-40 game here. The thing about Tennessee that they, you think about them running the ball, but Derrick Henry's not getting 3 yards a game. He's breaking off huge chunk plays. It's not running the clock the same way that like Baltimore would like to run the clock sometimes when they run. They just pound it down your throat. Henry slices you open and takes it 70. So this isn't like a run game that controls the clock. I mean, they still do win in time of possession, but not like you'd expect from a team that has a running back like Henry, because he'll get like a 2-yard gain, a 3-yard gain, a 40-yard gain. It's just wild how much big chunk plays they get from their run game. Also, AJB finally saw what I was looking for last week in a pretty tough matchup for real. This is a cakewalk matchup. I'm starting AJB in every single thing. DFS, no doubt in my mind, this is an AJB game. Obviously Henry is a must start. I think last week proved that. I kind of faded him a little bit, and I paid hard for it in DFS last week because I thought the Bills' defense is so good. They're going to get ahead. They're not going to be able to run. No. When they're behind, they still run because Henry can score from anywhere on the field. So to me, I don't care what Henry costs. Well, I kind of do, but you almost got to plug him into your lineup. He's so much better than everybody else right now. On the other side, you got to argue Mahomes is QB1 this week. Tennessee might have the worst defense in the league, although last week we did see some flashes and some pretty impressive stuff, but I'm not sure that can continue. I think this is a Mecole Hardman game. I think if they're going to try to stop anybody, it's going to be Tyreek, and that means Hardman. And then maybe I guess there's a chance that it's Robinson or Pringle, but I think it's going to be Hardman that does it this week. And then Kelsey, it's Kelsey. You stick with him. I'm not sure. Julio doesn't look like the Julio we've seen. Sure, he had that incredible catch, and he's still a viable option. But to me, AJB is heads and tails above him. So maybe a stack of Tannehill, Henry, and AJB might be a really interesting thing. But Mahomes is going to – this is going to be such a high-scoring matchup. I wish my entire lineup on every one of my leagues had just these guys in it, because they're going to score so many more points than everybody else, and that's shown by the over-under of 57. Even Vegas agrees. So this is one I want all of. I don't think there's a bad play here anywhere. There's no bad plays. They're all good. Like, hammer this game. Although this is going to be chalk as hell in DFS, so you're going to have to be careful and maybe find it somewhere else, because I can't see any of these guys being low percentage owned. And I mean any of them, even Hardman and Pringle's going to have a high ownership this week. All those guys are. It's really there couldn't be a better matchup from what I could think of, because they're going to score against each other. They're going to have to keep their pedal on the floor, man. That's going to be by far the funnest game of the week. If you like offense, this is the one for you.
Yeah, nobody here is cheap. Even like Darrell Williams, I don't imagine is going to be very cheap in DFS. And it's not like he's some crazy running back. He's not even CEH, but he's still putting up he's still putting up good enough numbers that he's not going to be cheap. So, no, I think you nailed it. I mean, I don't think there's a miss on this field, right?
Whew.
The one interesting thing to me is like McCole Hardman putting up decent numbers as the wide receiver 2 there for the Chiefs, but Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson, right? I think if you're deciding between those two guys, it's a matter of principle and your kind of the way you run your team, right? Do you want consistency with average results, or do you want boom or bust? Because if you want consistency, it's Byron Pringle because he's getting 6-7 points a game. He had one that was, I think, 13, 14 points with the Ravens. But it's nothing outrageous, right? Whereas Robinson, it's either 14 points or like 2 points. So it's kind of, what do you want? Do you want that 6 or 7, or you want 14 or nothing?
The other thing to consider, and I don't know why I didn't think about this when I was taking my notes, but Josh Gordon plays for Kansas City now. And if there was a game for him to break out, this would be the one. I think he's probably the most interesting tournament play of all the Kansas City line receivers. It's just that, is he going to be as involved as he needs to be already? I saw an article that's saying the Chiefs wanted to have a more defined, bigger role week 7. So, I mean, if that happens, we've seen what Josh Gordon can do. I know it's been a while, but in this offense with the attention everybody else gets, Josh Gordon might be the sneaky play in DFS.
Yeah, I mean, he had 11 snaps last week, didn't get a single target, albeit that was against Washington. It was an ugly game for the Chiefs too, which I don't know if you've seen a lot of the Chiefs lately, but it seems like it's a team that's trying to refine its mojo, refine who it is, right?
Yeah, they're not
Mahomes seems like he's trying to do too much. Andy Reid, I know, is a good coach. I'd imagine that this is a guy that's sitting down with that team and saying, hey, look, we know what we're doing. Let's get back to basics, right?
It's very odd.
If there's a team I trust to kind of figure it back out again here, it's the Chiefs. The only issue is, when's their bye week? It is week 12. So we have a few weeks still before they hit a bye week. If they continue this spiral, or I don't want to call it a spiral, but it's ugly. And if they continue that, then there's some bigger issues at hand. I'd say if they don't figure it out prior to the bye week, week 13, I'm in on it because I think that's when they really kick it into gear and they figure it out.
How stupid did the Chiefs look for taking CEH over Jonathan Taylor? You morons. And we said that at the time, I think. Some people were like, oh, the fit's great. No, the talent was just on a different level. They would be a much different team with Jonathan Taylor back there right now. They really would. Not that CEH is a bum or anything, but Taylor's clearly the class of that class. And to see CEH on the board before him, wild.
It's insane.
Wild.
Well, that takes us into another interesting one here, right? We have the Washington football team going into Lambeau. Packers favored by 8.5 points, over under a 49. I got to bring it up. The trade talks, rumors of a 3-way trade between the Texans, the Dolphins, and Washington football team, sending Tua to Washington, Deshaun to Miami. Does Tua make this team any better? I got to ask really quick before we dive into the actual game.
He's trash. No, I can. We don't have to spend any time on this. I do not like
Good.
Tua.
I'm glad you agree.
His numbers. We'll talk about that more in Miami.
Yeah, we'll get into that. I was curious though. I had to get your opinion on it.
Maybe Davis Mills is going there. I like Davis Mills better than Tua already.
Davis Mills. I have interest in Davis Mills. Like we talked about a little bit earlier. There's some inconsistency, but
yeah, he's a rookie.
But anyway, yeah, we'll get into that again later. But this is an interesting game, right? The Washington football team. They put up a fight against the Chiefs last week, at least for the first half or so. I mean, Taylor Heineke playing pretty decent ball, right? I'm not upset with what I'm seeing from him.
It might be Fitzpatrick this week. I guess we'll learn on Sunday. I love Fitzmagic.
I think at the end of the day, I think Heineke is giving you a better opportunity to win, to be honest.
I don't know, man. We didn't get to see enough of him. But I do remember last year thinking, why are they starting Tua? Fitzpatrick has been better every time.
That's true. That's true.
I feel like what they got him for, I don't think Heineke's the long-term answer. You got to see what Fitzpatrick can do because they haven't been really that great.
But I think you come into the factor of, are you really winning the division against I hate to say this, but probably Dallas.
Oh
right?
yeah, it's Dallas.
But I mean,
what are you trying to see with Fitzpatrick? You got what is he 38,
they could make the wild card.
40?
They could make the wild card. Their defense has been garbage, so I guess they probably can.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of a, we'll see what happens. I kind of hope that it's Heineke because I think that, again, not that he's the long-term option. Hey, we'll talk about the Eagles later. I don't think they have the option either. There's a lot of quarterback controversy in the NFC East. None of these guys necessarily, other than maybe, not maybe, but other than Dak, there's no real solid answer to who's going to be starting for 3 of these 4 teams next year, let alone going on from that. But, Heineke, a guy that personally I actually have a league or two that he's going to be my starter just because that's who's on my bench. There's nobody on waivers. Yeah. But I think that there are worse options, right? Not a great one, not a terrible one. But, outside of him, Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissick, we've talked about them since, last year. Definitely big on either of them. But I don't know. I'm not huge on any of the receivers out of Washington necessarily. Even Scary Terry, I have concerns about consistency with who they give the ball to. It seems like they spread it out a little bit, and I'm not sold on one particular guy. The Packers, on the other hand, I mean, we all know who we like, but I just have to say my disappointment is Robert Tonyan. This is a guy I was expecting to have massive numbers, and he's only had 1 big game. So I don't know if this might be the week he finally gets involved, and I think it will be. This Washington defense doesn't match up great against the Packers, so with that being said, I take the over because I think that Washington does have the ability to score, and the Packers absolutely should. So I know in DFS, I've seen a little bit of Allen Lazard in there because he's pretty inexpensive. And I think this is a week you could really see a lot of focus on one guy, and that's probably going to be Devontae. And then guys like Allen Lazard, Robert Tonyan get kind of forgotten. They're able to score, and you're able to pick them up pretty cheap.
Yeah, I mean, all Packers, all systems go. I do think this is the Tonyan breakout week. For me, this has been extremely disappointing, but we know what this offense is. We know what Aaron Rodgers is. Also, I do expect Green Bay to get a lead, so I love Jones and even a little bit of A.J. Dillon this week. And Devontae Adams, I don't care who they're playing. Rodgers just loves throwing it to him, so that's the guy I'm after. On the other side, I hope it's Fitzmagic. And I also hope McLaurin is healthy because right now he's not. He's got a hamstring issue. But if he's good to go, I'm playing him because they are going to get behind. And then the other thing is Gibson's injury history. Like you look at Gibson, he had an MRI or X-ray on his shin. He has that cracked shin. They pulled him from the game. It's concerning for me. I'm all over McKissick right now. They're saying he may not take the role and he'll keep his standard role. And who is it? Patterson is going to take over for Gibson? No, I don't think so. It's going to be McKissick. We've seen what happens in the fourth when they're throwing a lot and McKissick comes in and takes over. Imagine starting that early because I do think Green Bay scores fast and then Washington's going to be behind and we're going to get a healthy dose of McKissick. Even if Gibson does play, once they get behind enough, they'll probably pull him and leave McKissick on the field a lot more. So that's an interesting DFS play for me. And every single Packer is an option. I do think that they cover the spread of 8.5, and I do think they bust out over. I did want to make a comment I forgot to say. I think I'm taking Tennessee on the money line this week in some of my bets because Tennessee, when they play like they did against Buffalo, who I think is the class of the NFL, like I don't think they beat Buffalo 10 out of 10 times. I think Buffalo wins the majority, but Tennessee played a great game. And when they play like that, they can destroy anybody. You can't stop that offense when it's fully realized. So I'll take Green Bay over with covering the spread. But again, if it's Magic is here, a lot of my bets I don't feel comfortable about because that guy is just, he's Magic.
Hey, that's why it's in the name, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that takes us into the team that might be trading Tua. Falcons favored by 2.5 going into Miami, over under 47.5. I mean, Tua, obviously, neither of us are big fans. We don't think he's looked that great, right? The Falcons haven't looked very good either, though. So
they have heated up, though.
They have heated up a little bit, which is definitely positive for them. But is it enough to sell you on the Falcons winning this? I mean, Matt Ryan. I mean, at the end of the day, the last 2 weeks are really his only great weeks. Tampa Bay, they had a little bit of a shootout. But against Washington, I mean, 29 points is impressive. It's 4 touchdowns. But last week against the Jets, who are not the best of teams, only 21.5 points. I kind of expected more from him. And I know that's a lot to say. He had 340 yards. But I don't know. I feel like I expect more with the team around him. And I guess it's because the receivers are a little bit less than ideal. And probably one of the big disappointments to me other than last week was Kyle Pitts. Was that finally the breakout game for him? Is he finally, going to show up now? 9 receptions on 10 targets, 119 yards. I mean, 1 touchdown. That's his first touchdown on the year. And you had to go overseas to do it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sold on this Falcons offense. I hope it stays hot, but do we really know that it will?
well, with the injuries in the Miami secondary, this defense is not what we expected it to be coming into this year. Starting with Miami, Tua sucks. I hate him. I hope they trade him. If he does, though, I think Brissett's out this week, so it would be Reed Sinnett starting at quarterback. How weird. Who thought we would see Reed Sinnett? Although he can't be worse than Tua, so it's not going to be that bad. I think Mike Gesicki is now a must to play in every game. The target share, even with Tua last week, I don't know what was going on with Tua week 1 when he barely looked at Gesicki, but since then, he's come on fire. I love him in every kind of format. I also like Waddle. Waddle showed what he really could be dangerous with in this offense, getting him in space and letting him operate. That speed is for real. On the other side of the ball, look, I think Matt Ryan could torch up Miami this week. Just being the veteran that he is and getting the evolution of Pitts, then the bye week, because we know tight ends do tend to take longer to adjust. And as special as Pitts was, I think there was an adjustment period. So, yeah, I think Pitts is a very interesting, although he's not going to be cheap likely. He's a very interesting tournament play. But the guy that I have to have on Atlanta is Cordarrelle Patterson. Holy smokes. This guy is on fire, and they're using him everywhere. So, like, the volume is there, even though he's not the starting running back, even though he's not the starting receiver. He's like the Manu Ginobili of this team. He comes in, plays all sorts of different stuff, has different roles, but he's always been effective so far this year with his touches, and he has a nose for the end zone. He's still that fast. So for a lot of the same reason, you get Patterson in space, he's so dangerous. He's the number 1 kick return average in the NFL. He's the best kick returner in NFL history.
You know who he reminds me of? Josh Cribbs. If Josh Cribbs had an extended career,
right?
I mean,
well, he's also 230 pounds. Like, people don't realize.
I was gonna say 6'2", 220, 230.
Yeah, he's huge.
So the real key with Cordarrelle Patterson, I don't know about you, but I have him in any league I could get him, especially on Sleeper, because he also has running back and receiver eligibility, and obviously you have flex as well. But you can put him all over your lineup.
He's so versatile.
You can do anything you want. And it's because he plays all over the field. I mean,
he literally does.
over the last few weeks, right? Obviously, week 1, nothing crazy, 8.7 points. But since then, 22.9, 16.2, 34.6, and 18.4, all in PPR leagues.
Jesus.
I mean, I don't see that cooling off after the bye week. I think that just stays right on rolling. Mike Davis is not the guy down there, let's be honest.
He hasn't been terrible, but Patterson is so much more special.
So, question for you: do you trust Russell Gage coming off of injury?
I really do think Pitts is going to be getting that kind of target share moving forward. I don't know that I like anybody outside of him and Ridley. I think that those guys have big games coming up at some points. I mean, it could even be this week because Miami's secondary is so banged up. But because of it being so banged up, I'd way rather have exposure to Ridley and even more so Pitts, because I don't think he's coverable when it's all said and done. And I think we're getting to see him realize if you have him and you make it to the playoffs, I think you're looking at a tight end that can carry you. They don't have a lot of other options. They have Ridley and they have Patterson. Don't get me wrong. They have Patterson. I love him. But this is a tight end that nobody that really covers tight ends can cover. So I think Pitts moving forward is the guy we thought he was going to be.
That's fair. And I will say there's not a lot of tight ends that can generally, carry a team, especially late in the season. That's just not
Kelsey. It's usually just Kelsey.
Yeah, I was going to say that's about it. And even him, it's I don't know that I would have used the same terminology with Kelsey generally. I don't think of him as carrying a team. But yeah, he could. But I don't think of him when I say carry a team.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's interesting.
I know what you mean.
But that takes us into a matchup with, I think, both of our least favorite starting quarterback.
I'm not there anymore. I don't like Hurts more. Lamar is
That's fair.
version.
That's fair.
This is the best version of Lamar we have seen. By the way, Tua's way worse than Lamar.
That's very true. That's very true.
I'll let you start off, but I'm starting to wonder. Lamar is improving in the ways that the stuff that he was not good at. I'm not saying he's awesome at it now, but he's the best I have seen of him in like the deep ball accuracy and like the better decision making. He does seem to be making better decisions. And so I'm not on the Lamar bandwagon yet, but for me, I think I may have underestimated that guy's ability to improve. And so if this continues throughout the year and he manages to stay healthy, because he hasn't taken a lot of big hits, and that's something that I know you and I harp so bad on because he runs so much, but he does seem to be better about avoiding those big hits and avoiding a lot of damage. And his arm is the best version of his arm I've seen. Not that he's an elite passer yet, but I mean, he's unstoppable right now. I've not seen something like this where you cannot stop him. And, I thought the Chargers were going to win that game. I really did. Although, God, Herbert had a bad game, but
he did.
Baltimore right now,
12 points.
Dude, I mean, we could spend the rest of the podcast talking about that, honestly, but I don't want to. What I want to talk about is Lamar Jackson may be making me wrong. It's possible because of the improvements. But I think for Baltimore, it's Hollywood all the time now because of this new and improved Lamar. That guy just can go absolutely nuclear. And I like Bateman this week too. I know Cincinnati's defense is not shabby, but Baltimore is so dangerous in so many ways, and Hollywood can get open on anybody. I don't touch the running backs right now. To me, if you have to, it's Latavius Murray. But my God, those running backs, like they're 100 years old put together, or something like that. It's wild. I don't like the old men, even though that system, I can't pick one. And then for Cincy, I think this is a Joe Mixon game. I really do. If he's healthy, I think this is a Joe Mixon game. I've been more impressed with the Cincy line than I expected to be, especially when they took Chase. But, I mean, they did sign some guys, and they don't have a dominant offensive line or anything, but it has been better than I think we were expecting it to be. And they have been able to run the ball on people sometimes. Baltimore's defense can be had. So, and then Jamar Chase just catches touchdowns. This is what the guy does. So for me, when is Higgins going to be the Higgins we saw last year? I don't know if he's going to be, because Jamar Chase is dominating the target. Like Burrow's looking to him deep. I was watching the red zone and the guy was saying this might already be the best deep ball receiver in the league. And he has a point with what he's saying. Him and Burrow have this deep ball connection. He's the guy to own. And I was probably the least like that in the preseason, thinking that it was going to be Boyd with all the attention those two guys were going to get. That was going to be the guy that benefited. But it's Jamar Chase doesn't seem like anybody can really stop him. He has such a good change.
I mean, he's an incredible athlete, incredible receiver. There's no question of that. And I don't think any of us denied that going into the season. But I think we just figured that he was going to garner so much attention from defenses that somebody was going to be left out, and it was Boyd or Higgins. Higgins has played well, but not at a crazy level that we were kind of hoping for. He's had, some lower games. I will say my biggest impression from the Bengals this year has been Joe Burrow. Obviously, last week got a little banged up, but only played 82% of the snaps. Not ideal there, but still played a great game. 3 touchdowns last week. Only one interception last week. That's been his biggest downfall. 3 interceptions week 2 against Chicago, 1 against Pittsburgh, 2 against Green Bay, and 1 last week against Detroit. He's still playing good football, though. He's getting more confident with what he's doing. He's not that I would do it, but he's getting more confident behind that offensive line. But he's learning what he needs to do, to move the ball and not get destroyed. So I think Joe Burrow, I have the confidence week in, week out to pretty much start him at this point. I don't have concerns. Whereas last year and going into this year, I wanted him on my team, when I could get him, but I didn't necessarily want him to be the guy I relied on. At this point, I think that you're seeing that confidence in him that you can start to rely on him as a week in, week out starter. So if you have somebody else you might be able to move, I think that this is the time to do it. You're ready to kind of take that step. I do still have concerns about that O-line. It still looks bad, but it's again, kind of they're learning each other. On the other hand, the Ravens, we'll get to Lamar in a second, but these running backs, real quick, I got to bring it up. I just don't have faith in anybody. That's just a weird running back room. Obviously, you lose your top 3 running backs to, season-ending injuries. You're going to get into something like that, right? You're not going to bring somebody in or most likely, you're not going to get somebody that is a showstopper that's going to take over as your only running back, right? That's not going to happen. Even when you have a bunch of you have Le'Veon Bell, Devontae Freeman, Latavius Murray, all guys we wanted to have 3 years ago as our starting running back in fantasy, right? It's weird, right? The running backs, like you said, Hollywood Brown, I like him. Beyond that, I'm not sold on anybody. I think you're right, but Bateman at some point here is going to start to have a little bit of a breakout, but definitely could be this week, but I don't know, but definitely within the next couple weeks. Lamar. Got to talk about Lamar. No question. He has improved greatly. I can't deny that. When I look at his accuracy, one of the biggest things to me is on-target percentage. He's up to an 80.1% on-target percentage. That is phenomenal, right? So he's putting the ball on target, only 15.6% bad throw percentage. That's come down since his rookie year. He's playing good football. He does have 5 interceptions to 9 touchdowns, which is a high ratio for him looking over the last few years. He didn't generally throw a lot of picks. I think a part of that's probably kind of just lucky guys were dropping it over the last few years. This year, that luck's kind of twisted a little bit, but that's okay. His big addition, aside from being more efficient, is that he still has that rushing floor, right? Only 2 touchdowns so far this year, but that's not too terrible for him. But I still have the concern that this is a guy rushing for 65 yards a game on the ground.
Yeah, I get that.
You're throwing it over and over
in the air. Like he's averaging
281.
I just never thought that was going to happen in his career. Like for what I saw, at 208 a game when he won MVP, that's what I was thinking his ceiling was. 281, and with the volume, like he is shattering his volume as far as passing. So, he's going to shatter his yardage too. Like it's
that
not
brings
even
me to that brings me to one other concern, right? When you break down the game by game, right? Again, we talked about his completion percentage is up to 67.5%. Look good, pretty good against the Raiders, very good against the Chiefs, almost 70% completion percentage, 86% against Indy, which has a great defense. 70% against the Chargers, who have a very good defense, or good to very good.
Right.
60% against Denver, which is forgivable, right? Denver has a crazy secondary, very good pass rush, right?
Yeah.
51.6% completion percentage against Detroit. I need to go back and watch that game because I didn't watch it enough, right? I didn't watch enough film on that one, but I want to know why against Detroit did you only complete 51% of your passes for 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and you took 4 sacks against Detroit? And by the way, he only rushed it 7 times, which is tied for the lowest on the year for 58 yards and no touchdowns. And you had a fumble. That was just an all-out ugly game. And if Detroit can figure that out, can't other teams? Detroit's not good.
He might have just had an off day, man. Because you look at almost every other
happens.
Game. Yeah, it's anomalous too against Detroit.
It is. It's weird. You'd expect that kind of game against Indy or one of those quality defenses, but against one of the worst teams in the league, you had your worst day. It's just weird. It's weird. That's all. And like I said, I want to go back and watch the film. It's nothing that would, if you have Lamar and you're a Lamar guy, I would start him. No question.
Oh, yeah.
But to me, there's just that nagging voice in the back of my head. There's something there. And I'm sure defensive coordinators are thinking the same thing, and they're just trying to figure out what it is. And if I'm them, I'm going back to watch that game 87 times. But that takes us into Detroit. And this is probably one of the worst matchups on the week because it's a spread of 15 points to the Rams.
Second worst.
Over under a 50.5. I know, second worst. Yeah, we'll get into that worst one, but that's bad. Obviously, the Lions are not good. Jared Goff was getting called out by his own team this week.
Oof.
I don't know if you saw that, but that's never a good thing. Yeah, not ideal. At the end of the day, I there are some positives to be brought out of Detroit, right? I did love that he was bringing up that he wants Amon-Ra St. Brown involved more. Love to see that. TJ Hawkinson still playing it. He's still TJ Hawkinson, which doesn't surprise us. He has a tight end coach as a head coach, so as it should be, he's getting involved. A little bit of a concern with DeAndre Swift. I mean, is it? I don't know. I feel like I was just hoping for more from him. I mean, the last 2 weeks have been good, and then Baltimore is good, but like Green Bay, he just wasn't there. Chicago wasn't there. And I know he's been a little bit banged up, but it's just like, I don't know. I wanted consistency out of him. That's what I was hoping for. I just haven't seen it. I guess this offense, you can't expect consistency. I guess that's kind of the grain of salt I can take with it. But
yeah,
I don't know. Mixed feelings with him. I know it's great every other week, but those ones just they nag at me. Rams on the other hand. I mean, Matthew Stafford's chucking the ball like crazy. That's why it's a -15 spread. I mean, Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Robert Woods. Definitely start Kupp and Woods. Van Jefferson. I don't know. What are your thoughts on Van Jefferson? I'm kind of split on if I want to play him or not. Yeah,
he's high upside. He's more of a tournament play. I wouldn't play him in 50-50s or double ups. What a weird spread. Like 15 points.
It is.
That's like I could see LA doing that, but Detroit does have the ability to create offense with their running backs through the air and Hawkinson. I'm sad that Cephas is out. I really am. I thought that he was having a semi-breakout, not a breakout, but showing to be a consistent option in the flex. And, he's done now, and that makes me kind of sad. I want to see when is Tyrell Williams coming back ever? Is it ever going to happen? Because I got that guy stashed on some IRs just waiting because he was a fantasy. Like he did show per touch. He was extremely effective. But this team cannot throw the ball to receivers right now, and I think that has a lot to do with Jared Goff. I will take the over because I do think Detroit finds some ways to score against the Rams, and the Rams get close to 50 on their own. So the narrative of the revenge game cancels itself out because it's a double revenge game. Like Stafford's after Detroit, Goff's after LA. There was nothing Goff would like to do more than to beat the bejesus off of McVay's pants right now. Like seriously, if I'm Jared Goff, it's all I'm thinking about probably, which might be why he sucks. But it honestly could be a weird game. I don't like this game either. 15 is too big of a spread for me to mess around with. Anything could happen. But to me, it's Cup. You have to start Cup. This is a Cup week again. It's mostly been Cup weeks, actually. Let's be realistic. And then again, obviously for the revenge game factor, Stafford is a wonderful play. But I'm afraid they might get 2 ahead. And then they try to – that's why I like Henderson this week. And even Michelle, if you're like really, really not doing well on running backs and you got to start that guy, he could vulture a TD late in the game. I could see it happening. And on the other side, just Swift and Hawk. I don't really want anybody else. But Goff is an interesting tournament play just because of that revenge game factor. But, man, this game, again, this is the toughest week that I think I've ever seen for spreads, and I don't think I'll touch a 15-point spread one way or the other. It's just too scary. Too much stuff could go on. If you made me pick right now, though, I think the Rams will win by more than that.
Yeah, I definitely would take it by more than that. But, hey, the Rams have kept some of these games close. Or, excuse me, the Lions have kept some of these games close.
They really have, at least for stretches of the game. They find little humming runs of offense where the backs and the tight ends just destroy. So, that's why I don't think I'll touch it.
I mean, losing to the Ravens 19-17 on a field goal that should never happened. Losing to the Vikings 19-17. Losing to the Bears 24-14. I mean, the biggest blowouts so far were the Packers 35-17.
But the first half, it was kind of an interesting. The first half of the Packers game
started raining. Until it started raining, and no fault of Jared Goff going into Lambeau when it's cold, it's wet. That's not going to be anybody's. He does. Small hands. He does. Yeah.
So and I don't think
Aaron Rodgers has played there for what?
Yeah, he loves that
20
weather.
years. I mean, that's been his home forever. So
Yeah.
not a surprise to see him play well there.
Yeah.
But well, a little bit of a closer spread here for the next one.
Oh, I can't wait to hear what you say about this.
It's been a few weeks for me to vent
To go
about
off
these
on
guys.
Philly, I know.
Eagles going into Vegas. Raiders are favored by 3, over under 49 points. I don't know if you know this. I was at the Carolina game. I went down to Charlotte. I actually left after the third quarter. I had a flight right after the game ended, so I had to leave. And I'm at the airport watching the finish of the game on my phone. And I'm just like, how the hell did they manage this? And I have to say, Jalen Hurts. There we go. It's still up there. Jalen Hurts hurts. Okay. This is a guy that fantasy-wise, great.
Yes.
Incredible. Because of the rushing floor. It's similar to Lamar in that sense where that rushing, you throw a couple picks, that's okay because he rushes for enough yardage that it bumps his numbers back up. But when you actually watch the games, it's all garbage time, which again in fantasy is great. I love garbage time. AJ Dillon, you can play because of garbage time, because he comes in the third and fourth quarter and they just start pounding it up the middle with him. And they do the same thing with Jalen Hurts late in games where teams start playing off ball or up by 15, 20 points. They start playing prevent defenses and the Eagles start carving them up with screens, which they've been running all game, but now they're not playing press coverage. So Jalen Hurts is getting easy dips out to the side, or he's running it for 10, 20 yards at a time. In reality, Jalen Hurts' quarterback play is abysmal. He can't throw the ball with consistency, more than about 15 yards downfield.
It's bad.
That's about it. He either underthrows receiver. He does. The whole team is built around speed, right?
Yeah.
You have Devontae Smith, you have Quez Watkins,
Rager even.
You have Jalen Rager. I mean, your top 3 receivers are deep threats. The other 2, it's an ex-quarterback in Greg Ward, who is one of the best receivers consistently that they've had. And then you have J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who shouldn't have made the team. All he does is block. That's literally all they have him do is play on rubs. That's why he's out there. So it doesn't make sense to me. Jalen Hurts underthrows the ball consistently, or in Charlotte, you have a free play. It's a pass interference, or it's going to be an offsides. You're 40 yards out from the end zone. You're clear you roll out. You're clear. There's nobody around you, and you direct everyone to the end zone. He throws it 5 yards to the right of the end zone. All you have to do is put it into the end zone, and you can't do that from 40 yards as an NFL quarterback with nobody around you. That's terrible.
I agree.
So
it's not good. He said 3 good games and 3 god awful. And I say good. Let me rephrase. He's had 1 good game against Atlanta week 1. That was a very good game. And I was going, whoa, how wrong
he didn't throw it past 15 yards, by the way.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at like the effectiveness of the numbers, 77% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 264. I'm like, hey, that's a quarterback's numbers. Since then, now he did in Dallas and Kansas City, 2 barn burners. He did put up big numbers, and he did have an above 60% completion percentage. But in every other one, he put up not good numbers and very low completion percentage, very low yardage, and 1 TD between those 3 games, combined with 2 interceptions. And that's against Tampa, Carolina, and San Francisco. So the Raiders, they're not really an elite D, so this could be a fantasy day for Hurts. Like you said, I love that differentiation. Hurts is valuable in fantasy right now. As long as he continues to start, he will be. But Philly's not good. And I think that what Philly kind of learned in that Carolina game, and I wish they would keep up, or not the Carolina last week in Tampa. I know they got beat, but Miles Sanders is your best player. Give him that ball.
Yes.
You could hear the crowd chanting it. Sanders has showed what he can do in limited touches. Give him the ball more. Let the offense open up. Take those deep shots. It's like Lamar that year he won MVP. Like, he wasn't that accurate on the deep shots, but he took enough of them that it made up for it. So Hurts could be effective if they can run the ball effectively enough. The line injuries again has been a problem. If they can run the ball effectively enough.
Less of a problem than you think in the run game, though.
Yeah, true.
Everyone on that line run blocks well. They
right? And it's
the bigger issue is the pass blocking. When they're dropped back to block, when they're going forward, they do just fine. Yeah, even if you
Sanders has
shuffle them.
torched people in the minimal stuff he's had. What is
Yeah.
it? I'm sorry, I had him up earlier. His yards per carry are again fantastic. I don't want to misquote, so I'm going to get this exactly right. Oh, of course, my computer doesn't want to let me.
Let's see, Miles Sanders this year, 4.7 yards per attempt. But
Solid.
keep in mind, that's 57 attempts over 6 games and no touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, but those are 4.7 is solid. Nobody is complaining about a 4.7 yards per attempt, and he should be getting the ball more if you're getting 4.7 yards each time you run the ball. It's nonsensical to me. How does that guy not have a touchdown? Also, 23 targets, 18 catches, like great catch rate. He hasn't done much with it, but I mean, how are you supposed to in this offense? Nothing is open up down the field, so the defense can kind of cave in, and there's not space for him to operate. Like, again, I like that his catch rate numbers are good. But for me, they got to give him the ball more or else they have no chance. So I'm actually in on Sanders this week. I think they will try. I don't think Vegas is going to torch him up, really.
So real quick on Sanders, you're talking about how much can he really do with those passes? So on those 18 receptions, the total yards the passes traveled in the air before being caught, right?
Mm-hmm.
Negative 62 yards.
That's really impressive that he's averaging 6.7 yards per reception with those numbers. That is really impressive. Like,
that means out of his, what was it?
You said negative what was this?
Negative, where was it? Negative 62 yards.
So
on
like
18
-3
receptions.
So he's basically getting 10 yards a catch with those numbers.
Yeah.
Like, no, that's not. I'm sorry.
3.5 yards. They're throwing it to him on average 3.5 yards behind the line of scrimmage.
And he's getting 6.7 yards per catch.
Yeah. This is a guy that's averaging a first down every time he catches the ball.
Yeah.
If you
essentially
10 yards.
Yes, in yards traveled. Exactly. Yeah. It's
I mean,
stupid.
I just don't understand what they're doing. And like I said, with Hurts. So oddly enough, one of the fun facts with Hurts, and I didn't get a chance to bring this up because we haven't been on the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, going into the Panthers game, his on-target percentage was lower than his completion percentage. Which, what that shows me is you're being bailed out. I've never seen that before.
I've never even heard of that. Although I don't go through and check each quarterback. I've never heard of that.
To me, that tells me you were being bailed out by receivers that are really making some plays for you.
Yeah,
and watching the games, that's what I'm seeing. Yep. You're seeing receivers that they are making ridiculous catches, or like the majority of the deep throws are to Quez Watkins. And it's really just Hurts is throwing the ball up. There is no rhyme or reason to where he's throwing it. He is just putting it up there, and Quez Watkins is playing in center field, and he's going to go track the thing down. That's what they do.
That's weird.
We didn't talk about the Raiders a lot here. That's a weird team. Obviously, you don't have your head coach now. We're going to go quick on this one, unfortunately, I think. But Derek Carr playing at a pretty decent level. Josh Jacobs, I'm not mad at. Henry Ruggs, great deep threat. It's a boom or bust.
I think it's all boom right now. I think in a lot of the same ways that it's Marquise Brown, this is now the new, slightly poor version of Marquise Brown in this offense, and Carr can throw a deep ball. Carr has much more accuracy on his deep ball, and Ruggs it's paying off. He's getting that 1 or 2 catches that are real big, and he's making it worth it. You don't need a lot from him when he gets numbers like he's getting. And then Waller, for obvious reasons, like you said, I don't think we need to talk too much about it. Waller, just you start Waller, but Ruggs. I mean, 1 second. Ruggs' yards per catch this year have got to be leading the league. I need to see if he's leading the league in yards per catch right now. I think they'll show that
really quick while you look that up.
Yeah, 22.3. Number one in the NFL right now.
His lowest week in a PPR league was 6.6 points week 1.
Ooh, man, that's great.
But I got to bring up somebody else who same actually for the lowest week they've had, Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah,
consistency.
Yup.
10 plus points pretty much every week other than last week.
Plug him into flex and leave him there. I mean, unless you're deep. Yeah. Like some of my teams, he's on my bench. Not this week, but some of my teams.
He's a wide receiver 33.
Dude, that's basically a wide receiver too.
Hunter Renfrow.
Yeah,
Hunter Renfrow.
He's like the Cole
He was
Beasley,
in
the Wes
college for
Welker, the Julian
14
Edelman.
years.
Oh, it's amazing.
He
I
spent
love
14 years in college. He's already been in the league for 17. I mean, come on. What else do you want from a guy that's 74 years old?
Wow. So the lowest yards per reception game that Ruggs has had this year is 17 against Chicago. That's the lowest yards per catch that he's had all
That's
year.
per catch. Do you have per attempt or
no, but
per target?
I'm betting yes. So the lowest for that was Baltimore and the Raiders week 1, 9.2 yards per target. Then 16-1-4, 11-1-4, 10, 17, and last week against Denver, 24.25. Like, I'm betting he leads the league in yards per target too. Although I don't know that they track that the same way. He's got 13.9 yards per target on the season right now. Who's
I'd
more
bet
than
that I'd bet that there's somebody that's a wide receiver
Marquise?
4 that might just.
Oh yeah, Donovan Peoples-Jones.
It's somebody that owns or like Deshaun Jackson.
Oh yeah, fair.
Like only goes on a 9. That's all they do.
Ruggs,
and
good Lord. And he's increased his catch percentage, but not significantly, but some. He's already had as many touchdowns this year as he's had last year. It's just, and he's almost at the volume of his entire rookie year through week 6.
There's
really
a lot
awesome.
to like.
Yeah, I like if he can stay healthy, which is kind of because he's a slight build. But if he can stay healthy, he's not as little as Devontae. And if he can stay healthy, that kind of speed, goodness gracious, like breakout that I wish I could have seen coming for sure.
Yeah,
I just didn't know Carr was going to be this good.
Hey, I always knew he was good.
Yeah, but this good?
Good.
Right.
Yeah.
Me too. That's his ceiling.
Good.
Was good.
That's it. I didn't think it was necessarily ceiling, but like he was like the floor was here, ceiling was here. It was a narrow range. He didn't range out of that. So, but we'll move it on here. There was a little trade between two of these teams. The one that we just talked about, Philly and Arizona. We're talking about the Texans going into Arizona playing the Cardinals. This is the biggest spread of the week at 17.5, over under a 47.5. This is our first chance to see Zach Ertz out of an Eagles uniform. Personally, I think that was the best trade for everybody involved. Both teams, player, everything. It works out the best. I think that Ertz is an automatic upgrade to this Cardinals offense. They didn't really have much at tight end. They had was it Max Williams or
he's on IR.
Max Williams, right?
Yeah, he's on IR. Yeah, he's on IR.
Like exactly.
They're
so,
in trouble
but that's why they traded for him. But it's not like he was something crazy. Obviously, Zach Ertz is aging, but still a fantastic option. Yep. So love having him on this team. I think that's a massive upgrade. Kyler, obviously, you want to play, automatically. A guy I was impressed with through about week 4. He had 2 rough weeks here, since then. But against, he's been a little banged up. Chase Edmonds. I mean, we talked about him a little bit early in the season. He is killing it in yards per carry. I don't know if you've looked at this, but last week in Cleveland, he only had 4 attempts. Again, he's been banged up. 11.5 yards per carry against the Browns. I mean, that's pretty impressive, right?
Agreed.
Across the season, he's averaging 6 yards per attempt.
Yeah, I mean, he's effective. He's effective. The problem is James Conner's there. And James Conner gets all the goal line looks. He's averaging 3.4 yards per attempt, but that's extremely misleading because a lot of his attempts are from very close. And that's why they're
from the 2 or 3 yard line.
5 touchdowns in 6 games.
And Chase Edmonds has none receiving or rushing.
This is a thunder lightning scenario. The big bruiser back that punishes it, and the guy that operates between the 20s that really is the better receiving threat. Although, Connor's 5 for 5 targets, 5 catches, but there's no way you can handle the volume that Edmonds does. And Edmonds has been banged up, man. I lean Connor just because I think they get the lead, and then when they get into the red zone, they pound it in. He could have another 2-touchdown game. Like, this is what it spells out for me. Connor's the guy I want.
Yeah. I think that you could see the volume for Edmonds, though.
Well, he's a little I don't know how healthy he is, and I think they
well,
want him
and I'm not. I don't mean volume. I'm not saying he's going to get 30 touches, right? But I think that he could get. You look at the season; he only got 12 8, 11, and 12 in the first 4 games. In every game, he had 12.5 or more, up to about 18 points in a PPR league. And then receiving, I mean, he had 4, 5, 7, and 4 receptions, right? So that's really where he's getting his bread and butter, is receiving. I think early in the game, they'll probably utilize him pretty well with that. He'll get a handful of carries, which is enough for him. It's not like he needs 20 carries to get a solid amount of yards. I still think he'll play.
But he was on 36% of the snaps last week. So the thing is, he's so effective when he does play. He's going to play, I think. But it could be another one of those 36% of the snaps, especially if they get a big lead and let Connor pound them.
I'll put it this way. I want him in the flex. That's where I want to put him.
I would hesitate only this week. Like, I love Edmonds, but this particular week,
here's the good news. It's a late game.
True.
That's why I want him in the flex.
Fair.
They put him in the flex. See if he's playing. If he's playing, I want him in the flex. Because worst case, I think last week is probably a pretty safe floor. Obviously, San Francisco is a bad week for him, but I don't see him having another week like that, especially against a team like the Texans. So I think last week's 8 points is a pretty safe floor, even if he only plays 36% of the snaps. Right? So I think he's a great option.
He's effective. Efficiency, like you said, he's very efficient.
Yeah.
But
these receivers.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
For me, it's Connor, because I do think that they get down to the red zone and then they pound it in. This spread is wild. I'm smashing the over, though. Houston has been able to score on most people, and I think they'd continue that with Arizona. So this is another game. This is the sneaky stack game that I think could be very interesting in DFS. Tyrod may play, but even if it's Mills, that guy has been a big gunslinger a couple weeks this year with massive yardage totals. Reminds me of, like, again, he's going to throw his interceptions and stuff, but that dude has a hot arm. So either one, because the Tyrod with the running ability, and Mills is no chump athlete, but I like both of them. And Brandon freaking Cooks this week. I'm going to plug him as well. It's going to be AJB and Brandon Cooks. There's no way he's coming out of any of my lineups. They're going to be behind. I mean, I think we both know that Houston's going to be behind for stretches of this game. They're going to have to throw, and Cooks is the.
You mean the whole game?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Houston could keep this closer than 17-5 technically, but I don't think that
they'll be behind though.
Yeah. Exactly. I don't really like the spread. I think I lean Houston on the spread.
I would hesitate on the spread. Yeah, I'd take the money line, no question. I'd hesitate on the spread.
Yeah, 17.5. With the way Houston has shown they can score on people, that seems too much. Their defense isn't trash either.
I would almost be curious to, depending on what the actual, on the spread, right? If you took the Texans plus 17.5, what are you making on that? And if it's big enough, I'd probably put a little bit on that, because I wouldn't discount the opportunity of taking a big win if it's like plus 3, plus 400.
Yeah, it won't be that. It'll probably be like minus 110 or something. Those spreads are never great odds. Now, Houston money line would be a preposterous bet, but I don't think I could stomach doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
but
they
be
should
an
be closer than 17.5. I agree. I think it's going to be high scoring. And I also think we need to be cautioned on Ertz this week, his first week into the offense. And Kyler has been spreading the ball around a lot anyways. So, I do love Ertz.
I wouldn't necessarily start Ertz, but
exactly.
I think it's a good thing for the offense as a whole.
Me too.
Because I think he draws more attention than Max Williams would.
Yeah, and I got to be
maybe not this week, but going forward he could.
Yeah, I wrote an article this week about Nuke. Basically, it wasn't just Nuke. He was part of what this article was. Nuke is not even close to his career marks on targets or catches. Now, he's going touchdown crazy this year, so his value is high. But for me, and this is speaking strictly in Dynasty, move him now, because Kyler is evolving, and he's throwing to AJ Green, Christian Kirk. Rondale Moore is a real weapon in this offense. Now you add in Zach Ertz, and you have Chase Edmonds out of the backfield catching the ball. Hopkins is not going to have – he's on pace for, I think, 106 targets, including that 17th game. That would be his lowest since his rookie year. It is not a good scenario. The only thing that's salvaging his season right now is the fact that he has 5 touchdowns, or 6. I'm sorry, he may have 6. That's awesome. And he's on pace for 17 touchdowns. I don't see that pace holding with the way Kyler is playing right now. And this is the best thing for the Cardinals, but not so good for Nuke owners. And if I'm in a dynasty right now, and I'm not contending, he's gone. I'm moving him right now before he gets too old and this offense becomes too balanced, because that's what it's turning into. Like, I don't even think, not counting last week, he wasn't leading the team in targets. AJ Green was. Like, who in the red
Crazy.
saw that happening? Right. And that is a beautiful thing for that Arizona offense. But man, I'm off a nuke right now in Dynasty because it's not. Although this week, sign me up and give me Kirk and Green too. Like, I could see a crazy stack here. Again, avoid Ertz just for this week in DFS. That might backfire. Who knows? But I cannot see them making him a focal point of this offense just that many days removed from being acquired. He doesn't even know the playbook yet. He's been in the same offensive system his entire, well, not the same offensive system, but in the same place his entire life. So this is all new terminology. Kingsbury has we'll see. I love Ertz moving forward, but not this week against Houston. What a fun game.
Real quick, I wanted to bring up Rondale Moore because that man is getting involved in every way now, and I love it. So somebody to keep an eye on. It's a boomer bust. I wouldn't necessarily want to start him all the time, but
right.
I mean, as a flex or DFS, there are worse options out there. So, but that's going to take us into the Bears Buccaneers. Bucks favored 12.5. Not surprising there. Over under of 47 points. I mean, Bucks are definitely winning this game. I don't think that's a question, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even as banged up as that defense might be, it doesn't really matter because Tom Brady's going to make sure that he runs over this Bears team. And Justin Fields, he just isn't doing it yet.
Nope.
Right?
Not yet.
I mean, last week, not a bad week per se against Green Bay. 16 for 27, 174 yards, 1 touchdown, only 1 pick, which is good to see. And 6 rushes for 43 yards, which is pretty solid. You know, it at this point to me with Justin Fields, I don't want to play him right now, but he's providing that look that you want if he's on your bench for, you know, Dynasty League, that he's gonna be viable long term for you, right? Matt Nagy needs to go for that to happen. And I think that Mitch Trubisky didn't get a fair look at the end of the day. When you see what Matt Nagy's doing with an offense, I think Mitch Trubisky's a lot better than a lot of us gave him credit for. But, you know, Justin Fields, I'm holding off on. The Bucs, on the other hand, I'm playing Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. If Antonio Brown plays, he is actually relatively inexpensive in Dynasty for the points he's putting up, in DFS. So somebody I'd be interested in. Gronk I'm avoiding just because he's still banged up, and even if he plays, I don't know that he's effective. And then if I had to pick a running back, I think it's Lenny. I think Lenny's the guy I'm going with.
Yep. I agree. Tampa Bay's going to destroy 12.5. I feel comfortable betting the spread towards Tampa here. I disagree on the Gronk thing. If he plays, I think he's a must play. Brady just showed he doesn't have to play that many snaps. Put him in the red zone, touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. That's what Gronk is when healthy. Once again, one of the best tight ends in the league again. It's been awesome, but his body can't keep up with his excellence. So what I find fascinating is that Antonio Brown seems to be the safest play at wide receiver for this team. Like, he's getting the targets. Godwin's and Evans are both more boomer bust options right now. And Evans even more so than Godwin is, because Godwin has gotten more targets than Evans, although Evans has been banged up. But I think Fournette is going to run a lot this week with the lead. They're going to get the lead. They're going to pound it. Fournette had a huge week last week. I don't expect that again, but he's going to score, and they are going to try to punish Chicago. They do have a solid defense. But on the other side of the ball, no thank you. No thank you. Not touching any of it. I can't wait for Montgomery to get back to actually get to see what Fields can really look like. That being said, Khalil Herbert has been pretty good, but losing Damon Williams to COVID, like those two guys in tandem could have been serviceable. It's tough on Herbert. He's been good. Don't get me wrong. Like, they got to like what they've seen out of him, but Montgomery was playing at a level that really very few running backs were matching. I loved what I saw from Monty this year. I need him back because I have a lot of exposure, but it's all Tampa Bay. And I am all over Gronk if he plays. I just think that he doesn't need a high snap count to be effective in like DFS or fantasy. But don't touch Chicago this week in any way. I would not play a single player for Chicago, even though Tampa Bay secondary is busted up. I don't know that Fields can take advantage of it yet.
I will say I'm very curious in a couple DFS leagues to Komet, because he costs, I think, about $3,000, maybe $3,500. And obviously we haven't seen it from him this year. I know he has the ability, but like I'm just in a couple of them, I can't help but take that shot. You know what I mean? That's just so inexpensive for the ability that he has. So
yeah, I get it.
And like I said, with Fields, it's not today, but he's showing us those glimpses. It's the things you want to see from a guy that young.
Yeah, he's a rookie. People need to realize that.
Yeah. But taking us into the Sunday night game here, Indy going into San Francisco. San Francisco favored by 4, over under 44.5. I got to talk about Wentz, man. Carson Wentz is playing well.
Yes.
Right? He's, I don't want to say that 2017 season level, but I mean, it's impressive. I mean, we look at the last few games here. Last week was probably the worst of them, 11 for 20, 223, and 2 touchdowns. But against Baltimore, a good defense out there, 25 for 35, 400 yards and 2 tutties. Miami, he went 24 for 32. Yeah, I mean, he's not necessarily winning the games, but he's putting up solid points. He's got 2 touchdowns for the last 3 games straight. I mean, there's not a lot not to like about it. So he's showing up. He's putting up pretty good points. He's a good, second quarterback. He's 17 points or more in the last few games. And then Jonathan Taylor, I mean, he's showing up too. Oof. Oh, God, I was hoping he would because the first few games I was struggling with him. But, I mean, last week, 145 yards on 14 touches, 10.3 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns. He didn't have a single touchdown his first 3 games, and he has 4 in the last 3. Obviously, Miami, Baltimore, and Houston, not the best against the run this year, but still impressive. San Francisco, obviously a bit stouter. I still think he has a pretty viable week. Tennessee, I think getting a second look at them, he averaged 6.4 yards per carry the following week, or against Tennessee. So not this week, but the next week, I think he'll again still be okay. But I think you could be in for a little tougher running for him. I don't necessarily go in on DFS for him, but I do go in, obviously if you draft him, you're starting him. He's a first rounder. And then Michael Pittman, I got to mention, that's a guy that he finally showed up a bit this year. I'm excited for that. We were hoping he would do it all last year, and we're finally seeing it. San Francisco, on the other hand, I mean, Trey Lance, again, it's just a rookie quarterback. I still can't trust him to start, but
I think Jimmy G's starting.
Some of the things I like.
I think Jimmy G started. They're talking about it because Lance is banged up too, but they're saying Jimmy G may be coming back this week.
If neither of them started, that would be at end of the world because I don't even know if they have a third quarterback. But
Colin Kaepernick.
Or if they, I was going to say
no.
Oh no, you know who they have? I think they have Nate Sudfeld from the Eagles. Not going to be pretty if that's the case. I don't know. I think, obviously you don't have your number 1 target in George Kittle. Other than that, I mean, it's Ayuk and Debo. I mean, it's pretty clear at the end of the day who you want to take because Debo has been snapping these last, or really all season. He has 2 30-plus point games. Ayuk, on the other hand, not bad, but nothing close to that. He's okay, I guess. So I'm in on Debo, not so much Ayuk. I don't want any of the tight ends. I will say I've seen Kyle Juszczyk being used more this year.
Yeah, I won't do that.
I'm not saying I would, but like some super deep leagues that I'm in, I've seen people putting him in.
Yeah,
he had a 16, 17-point game the other week, and it's just interesting to see that happen. I love seeing some fullback love.
Me too, but I just can't convince myself to do it. For me, it's Jonathan Taylor touchdown time. This guy, just like last year, kind of started out, and then all of a sudden, man, something goes off and he just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And remember how he finished the year last year? He started that already. I don't think it matters who he's playing. I really don't. I am all over him right now. His price is going to get ridiculous soon. I think he torches San Francisco's defense. He just keeps getting better. Also, T.Y. Hilton, how viable was he in his first game back? I think that's going to help Wentz be even better. And then it should help Pittman too. Take some defensive pressure off of him. Hilton, I kind of thought it was a joke, and I didn't have any exposure to him last week. Hilton showed out. Like, he showed, look, he's not the guy that was a Pro Bowler, but he might still be their best receiver as Pittman's continuing to grow. And at the very least, defenses will pay more attention to him, which should open everything up. I love Carson Wentz this week a lot. Pangs picks, I feel you. Here for the Wentz talk. I'm all over him this week in the San Francisco matchup. Indianapolis has to win. Like, they've put themselves in a hole, and this was supposed to be a championship caliber team, and I do think that exists still there. But they got to win this game. They got to win pretty much every game. Their back's already against the wall. Tennessee is going to win that division, it seems like. So Indianapolis is gunning for one of the 3 wild cards, and I think it's possible, but they got to get going. And I saw it last week. Wentz led them twice down to win the game, and they couldn't do it. 2 times he had them winning the game. I don't know, Pangs. It looks like they're saying Jimmy G may be starting. I don't know if that's good or bad, because I think that Trey Lance is a little bit banged up. So, I mean, both of them are banged up. And we were just talking. You just got here. Nate Sudfeld, we believe. Neither one of us looked this up, is the 3rd quarterback. That is really good for Indy, if that's the case. So for me, give me all of that. On the other side, I think their number 1 target is not George Kittle. It's Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel is super
Kittle's out.
Special. Yeah, what I'm saying is when everybody's healthy,
just in general,
still need to feed Deebo more than Kittle. He's more special. Like, Kittle's very special for a tight end. So in that regard, he's more special comparatively to his peers. But Deebo is super special, and he's much better than Kittle is. I do think for sure this is the Ayuk game. Like, this is the game Ayuk gets involved. None of this makes sense. We know how talented this guy is. None of it makes sense. Without Kittle,
I'll let you bet on that, Ryan.
I'm going to be having Ayuk in my DFS and some tournament lineups. The problem is I already got my 2 receivers ready to plug in. Yeah, exactly. A returning Jimmy G. I hate Jimmy G. I'm concerned. I'm taking Indy money line this week, not even playing with the spread. I will take Indy with the good odds +4. They have to win. And if they just stick to running the ball with Taylor, they can do anything with this offense. So they got to run the ball. San Fran can try, but I don't think it matters who plays quarterback. Debo's going to have himself a game. I think Ayuk has himself a game, but when it all said and done, Indianapolis is not going to be able to be stopped by San Francisco. Taylor is just that good. And Wentz is just that good enough. Like, he's not an elite QB per se, but Wentz can win you a Super Bowl with the talent around him, and there is talent here enough to do so. Indianapolis has to win this game. That's why I'll
tell you what.
This week.
I'm not going to say he couldn't become that. We saw hints years ago. Yeah, exactly. I don't think it's impossible for him to get back to that. We got to see it. It's yet to be seen, but.
Panks brought the money line on Colts too. I think it's a really clever play, and I think that spread, as we get closer to the game, comes down. So if you're going to bet on the money line, now is the time to do so, because I think my suspicion is that the public's going to lean Indy, especially with the QB uncertainty for San Fran, and that spread's going to be looking more like 2 by the time kickoff comes around, and the odds aren't going to be as good by that point. Like, I like to wait to make my bets for last-second injuries, but on this one, unless it's Taylor or Wentz, I don't care. So I want to get the spread. Now, if it starts climbing, I will double down and put another bet on it, because I do feel, honestly, if Indy loses, their season's over. I honestly think that's what's going on. They can't lose again, at least for a while. Yeah. They have to get back to 500. They got to win.
Well, last game of the week here, Monday night, Saints -5 going into Seattle, playing the Seahawks over under 43 points. Now, obviously, the Seahawks, you got Geno Smith playing here. By the way, their backup, I don't know if you know this, they just picked up Jason Eason.
Ooh, oh my goodness.
The Colts dropped him, and they picked him up.
I don't know.
So a little interesting one there.
I'm just to go back slightly. They believe in Ellinger? Because when I was watching preseason
enough
football,
to be a backup,
Eason was the better quarterback, in my opinion. I just thought you could do more with him. I don't like Ellinger that much.
I didn't think either one was bad. I'll say that. I didn't think either one was bad, but I don't think either one's great either. I don't think either one's the guy you want long term.
I think Eason has a serious ceiling, but no floor.
That's fair.
Like that does not come around every day. That guy can launch balls in ways that he has an absolute laser. I'd love to see him starting in this offense with DK and Tyler Lockett. Holy mother. Like, those kind of guys with that kind of arm, both of them just breaking the field, just run post routes all day. You know, you'll score enough just doing that. But having Chris Carson.
I'm curious if they let him learn the offense and they take a shot with him.
Why not? You know what you have with Geno? He's just, you know what he
Yeah.
is, though? He is a solid backup. I
He
honestly
is.
think Geno Smith is a solid backup. He's not a problem for your QB2. He has experience. He's similar enough in some ways to Russell Wilson where you don't have to change the offense up that much. But yeah, no, I'm not touching Seattle this week. Obviously, like we say,
Yeah.
if you have DK or Lockett, you have to start them.
Exactly.
But in DFS, no. But on the other side, so in that same article I wrote earlier, I said it's time to move Kamara too in Dynasty.
Yes. Thank you.
Drew Brees was a big part of his success. And we have seen now so many of his numbers disturb me. Now, I know his age is not an issue yet. He's 26, but I am disturbed. He's running the ball way more and he's catching the ball way less, and he's been way less effective in both. It's not looking like Kamara next year is a top 10 running back. That sounds crazy to say out loud, but I don't think with the current setup.
I don't think it is.
No, I don't think it is either. But this week, oh boy, he's a top 10 running back this week. This is going to be the week I use him. Like, I'm in a shout out to Lineup Showdown. It's like an eliminator for DFS per se. So it uses MFL. Oh, I hate MFL, but it uses MFL, and you get to pick every week. You submit a lineup of all the available players: one quarterback, one running back, one receiver, one tight end, one kicker, one defense, and then one super duper flex. You could be anybody. You can play two of any position and one of the rest. And this is my Kamara week. There's never going to be a better matchup. The offense for the Saints isn't that great, but Seattle can't really stop many people. And they're going to need Kamara if they want to win this game. And I think they can if Kamara has a big day. But after this, again, I'm moving this sucker immediately. Probably after this week when he goes off, because that's not going to be happening too much with Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill for that matter under center. But Marquez Callaway, that's the guy that I'm targeting. If I'm going to target a receiver, Callaway had a bit of a breakout. He's starting to be the guy that wide receiver one we thought he was going to be. This is the week I think I could kind of lean on him in DFS tournaments as well. But I don't like this game.
So with Kamara, I'm not going to lie. If I had the opportunity to move him today, I probably would.
Yeah,
I'd even take that chance knowing that there's a good chance he has a great week this week, right?
Yep.
And I'm okay with that because looking at last week with 29 points against Washington, week before 12, week before 20, week before 7, week before 18. It could be either or this week. I mean, he's been so up and down, obviously. You know, this week could be down just because that's how he's been all year. It's up, down, literally game by game. Or you had the off week. Maybe you're able to have another big week again. I don't know. I don't trust him, though. I just can't get with it. And I would very gladly accept, depending on the offer, obviously. I don't want to undersell him. But going off of such a I would absolutely take JTT for Kamara straight up
all day.
But I don't know that you can get that anymore.
I'll take James
don't
Robinson.
know that.
I know that's a bold statement, Cotton, but I would take James Robinson. Yeah. Somehow he got better this year.
Hey, we'll get there. But at the end of the day, the point is, I don't want to undersell Kamara, and I would rather try and sell now coming off a 29-point week than take the risk that against a defense like Seattle that he should do so well against, if he has a bad game, it's going to be a lot tougher sell. Going against a good defense or a good front four like Washington and having 29 points, I'd much rather go off of that game and try and sell him.
Yeah. I think it's time to sell in Dynasty before it's
Swift or Kamara? Swift.
Swift for Kamara. So in DFS,
trade for Kamara?
Again, I'm speaking only in Dynasty terms about when it's time to move Kamara. Would I trade Swift for Kamara? Yeah, I would, because Swift does have some injury history and that whole offense is arguably worse than New Orleans. But it's hard to know because they're using Swift like Kamara right now in the passing game. Redraft? Yikes. It's hard. Yikes. I'd probably do it in Dynasty more, and you could add something in there like a first or like 2 seconds or something, and they might do that to get Kamara, and that would make me happy. In Redraft, I need more. I need more than Swift for Kamara just because you can get more for Kamara.
I don't think it's a ton that you need, to be honest, but I think you can get a little bit more out of it.
Right.
Even if you have to throw in somebody else, you can upgrade somebody else. You can make it a 4-person trade now, or 2 players each, and you can upgrade somebody else at least a little bit.
Yeah, because
I would
Robinson for Kamara in redraft. So I just said I would do that. I would do that personally, even though, again, not a great offense. Robinson has improved in every statistical category that you want to see this year. His better yards per carry, even though the volume's slightly down, but I think that they're finally realizing they're competitive when they give Robinson the ball a lot. That's what it has seemed to me. Every game has been close when they've given him the touches he needs or closer, and they get blown out when they start ignoring Robinson. He's by far their best.
Put it this way. At the end of the day, both Swift and Robinson are much more consistent than Kamara.
Yeah, and again, it's not
much
Kamara's
more
fault.
consistent.
It's no
it's not. Own. But I would rather looking at James Robinson, the last 4 games, 24, 20, 21, and 19, round it off, right?
So you made the Swift trade? Sorry. I'm sorry, Tom. I was reading what he was saying. I got confused. You made the Swift trade, or you made the Robinson trade? Because he's saying I made that trade earlier today for a friend that fell off, but it made more sense. Dude, you and I are on the same page on this as well. Like, Kamara, it's time to go.
I wouldn't be Swift Robinson.
I'm not. I like that. You got Robinson?
I do like that.
Dude, I like that a lot.
I mean, honestly, any of these 3 really Swift or Robinson, I don't think you're ending up with a bad running back. Either one of them, right? I think that they're both very good. Kamara is very good, but again, I think that it's going to be hit or miss this year. It's going to depend on the game. And I would get rid of Kamara for either one of them.
Yeah, you can get more too if you do Kamara for either one of them. You can get more than that. Yeah, agreed. I picked up Najee this week on a bye. It just makes sense. You can tank the 1 week.
Well, Ryan, we made it through. With the bye weeks, with all the injuries that we've got. I don't know about you. I had a league last week that I couldn't start 2 running backs because I didn't have the roster spots because of injuries and buys. And I'm not dropping Jerry Jeudy.
Dropping McCaffrey. Exactly.
Some bum running back. Nope.
I'm with you.
So believe me, I will always do my best to start a valid lineup. But there are certain instances where if your entire bench is full of David Montgomery and Jerry Jeudy and guys like that, I'm not dropping them for a backup running back.
Same.
Yeah. But with that being said, tell them where they can follow you. Obviously, we're talking a lot about, injuries and how that's going to impact this going into this week. But if they have questions, where can they find us to find out more?
So you can see me on Twitter at @RealRyanHicks. Recently started writing for FF Face Off, just doing some contribution stuff because I got tired of not writing. So I needed to get some content produced. And thank you. Shout out Aaron Schill for saying yes and letting me. I got my first Dynasty page up with them now. I just need to get writing again. It feels good. So you'll see more stuff from me on Twitter because of that. I'll be sharing the stuff that I'm writing. It'll be Dynasty and other stuff as well. And then obviously most of the time you can find me on Sleeper. I'm always hopping around in all the leagues I'm in, loving the St. Jude Bowl 2-game win streak. So I'm 2-4 now. But the first place team in my division is 4-2. So everything is looking possible despite my 0-4 start that I can get back into it here. So for me, I'm just excited. I've had a pretty daggum good fantasy season so far, all things considered. So let's keep that journey alive. Mike Gesicki, Dawson Knox, I love both of you guys. You're my tight ends in almost every league. So you guys have been carrying me a long way. And same with James Robinson. Dude, you're the man. And then again, if you holler at me at Twitter, I'll get back to you. I'm not on Twitter that much.
Yeah, man. As always, at FFR Tom, you can hit me up there at Fantasy FR Live as well. You can reach all of us and our missing boy at BWit24. Like we said, hopefully Billy's going to be back next week with us. We hope you will, Billy. But, as always, we will be back next Wednesday. We promise you that. We promise you. We apologize for missing the last 2 weeks, but we appreciate everyone sticking with us and tuning back in this week. But with that, this has been the Fantasy First Rounders. Tune in next week because stats win ships.
They do.